Who are some of your favorite players you've ever covered? Favorite?
Yeah, meaning we have another category, the most interesting.
Right.
And this would be guys we like the best.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd have to start off with Ronnie Lott.
Yeah.
Ronnie
Funny, you
Lott,
start with a safety. I was going to start with a safety too. Go ahead.
Okay. Ronnie Lott, God, what a player. And God, did he hit hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, when he would sit in the locker room, and again, at the end of the day, he and I and maybe some other people would just sit and talk, and it wouldn't even be about football. He was he was the sweetest guy. He was always very solicitous of me and even had an interest in what I was doing. I always felt better when I talked to Ronnie. It made my day. I remember, a lot of the Niners got traded to the L.A. Raiders. Al had this thing about getting Niners, and Ronnie was down there, and lunchtime, I wanted to interview him, and we just went around the side of a building down there. He brought a brown bag lunch. Mm-hmm. He's sitting and eating his lunch, and I'm interviewing him. It was just so casual and so nice. Roger Craig, on the other hand, was on that team. He was there that day. He said, "No, Lowell, call me at night. You could interview me on the phone." I thought, interview you on the phone? I was standing 10 feet away from you. So whereas I like Roger, I love Ronnie Lott.
Yeah. I love Jimmy Ward, another safety.
Oh, God.
Another guy who's known for hitting and being vicious. What I love about Jimmy Ward isn't just the fact that we get along so well and that he's been on my channel. I do love that. But I do appreciate how he's an independent voice. He will actually tell you how he feels. There's so few people like that in football teams. Now, most players, you can hear them getting edited by the coach as they talk, on the record, off the record. Jimmy Ward doesn't care. I've always loved that about him. He's a nice guy. He's a good teammate. He's professional, but at the same time, he has his own perspective on everything. I love that. Love that. There should be more Jimmy Wards.
Yes, and if you want to know the truth, if I were covering this team, the first player I would want to connect with is Jimmy Ward.
Yeah.
I would be fascinated by Jimmy Ward.
Yeah.
And Iggy, I think he's fascinated by you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Okay, I'll give you somebody else. Steve Young.
Yeah.
Steve Young was a superstar. I mean, no two ways about it. He was a superstar. And like Stephen Curry, another superstar, he was always available, always pleasant, never had anything crummy to say, and would give you time and would do it respectfully. Again, whenever I was with Steve, it always made the day better. And I felt that with Ronnie, and I felt that with Steve. Whenever I could spend time with him, I learned something. I was with a person of character, and it was a pleasure to have that interaction.
I like that one. I got one. Joe Staley.
Oh.
Joe Staley. I covered most of his career. I got there in 2011, and he was young. And I remember my first impression of Joe Staley was, man, this guy's a meathead. He's not that smart. And he would just kind of mumble in his interviews, really. But then when you would really listen to him, you would realize, like, man, this guy has a wicked sense of, he's very smart. One, he's got a wicked sense of humor and is dry. So what he really was in those interviews, he was kind of like, remember Shaq? Shaq would kind of mumble too, but Shaq was a riot. And he was like, you would hang on every word that he said. That was Joe Staley. And by the end, he was the senior member of the team. He was the guy who was, like you said, always there, always available, like Steve Young in the locker room. Joe Staley's a legend. I
would add to that, and we've said it before, the most intelligent players on the team are the offensive linemen. Now, there are exceptions, obviously, but I think from my point of view, Iggy, if you disagree, please tell me, they're the most wise about the world. They're the most normal. They have egos about the size of a normal person.
That's true.
And they're very observant and very articulate. And
they're not celebrities. No, they never get talked about unless they do something bad. They're just there, and you don't see them or notice them really.
That's right.
Yeah, and they're not violent. They're to actually uphold order.
That's right. If you think of chess, they're protecting the king, the quarterback. They're upholding order, which means, in a sense, they're conservative. They're conservatives. They're upholding the established order, and the defensive linemen, especially the edge rushers, are the renegades and chaos. Yes.
And what's interesting too about offensive linemen, they're the biggest people on the field. They're the strongest people on the field, but they're the one people on the field that really aren't trying to hurt you. They're just trying to protect. You know, they could hurt you, but they're there to protect. They're there to block. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I got another one of my favorite people I've ever covered, Ahmad Brooks. I know he's got some stuff in his personal life. He did some things he probably regrets, but in terms of how he acted in the locker room, go-to guy. I will forever love Ahmad Brooks after every game, every practice, thoughtful things to say. And the fact that he had that stuff in his past, people were afraid of Ahmad Brooks. No one would talk to him. So he'd just be sitting there totally available, like, hey, Ahmad, can you break down this game? Yup, got you. Thank you. That was smart. Loved Ahmad Brooks.
Okay, we have two lists. I had him on my most interesting list, but I'll move him over to my favorite list because, first of all,
he was always nice to us.
He was always, and whenever Iggy and I would be together, and he would see us and get a twinkle in his eye, and it's kind of going like this. Come on over here, right? Come on over. Yeah. And Iggy, we had so much fun with him, and everybody else hung back because they thought he was like Mike Tyson. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like he was toxic or something. It's like, man, you guys are missing out. You guys are missing out big time.
So,
those are some good ones.
I got another one that probably young people who follow you don't know. But on the Super Bowl teams, the left tackle was Keith Von Horst from Minnesota. And I would have to say Keith Von Horst might be the nicest person I ever met in my life. You've spoken to him, Miggy. He's gone now. Yeah. But, God, I used to – and again, he wasn't famous, but he was essential. And sometimes in the locker room, we just sit and talk about what's Minneapolis like or, things. It was just and after a game, I would go to him and Randy Cross, and they would have the most penetrating things to say, even if it was a loss. They were honest. They weren't ducking you. And they, I think, felt privileged to answer those questions. So I really loved.
Okay, sorry. One more. And this is, I don't love this guy because he gave the best answers or he was helping me do my job. But Patrick Willis was one of the nicest athletes I've ever met. Patrick Willis. And I got the honor to sit next to him during the Dallas Cowboys postseason game. Sat next to him in the press box. We discussed the entire game together. He's so down to earth and humble. Now, even after, he's about to be a Hall of Famer eventually. Always was that way. Didn't he call you sir when he was a player?
Sir. And I used to say, you don't have to call me sir. Yeah.
Yeah, but he would always do that.
Yeah.
I'll just
add two more.
Also, one of the most violent players I've ever seen in my life. Sorry, but he was nice and violent. Like Ronnie Lott.
Like Ronnie Lott. It's two personalities, Iggy.
It's amazing. Right? Like, how do you hit like that and talk like that? It's crazy. How do you have this split personality? Yeah.
I would add two more that I love to be around. Brent Jones, another tight end. What a great guy, a mensch. And Dwight Clark.
Absolutely.
Legend. Dwight Clark.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I knew Brent. I did meet Brent Jones when I was 7. He signed my hat.
Yeah.
Signed my hat.
And he had to ask you. You didn't ask him. He asked you, Iggy, can I sign your hat? Right?
That's true, because I was there to meet Steve. Steve gave me an autograph, and he was like, well, do you want Jerry Rice's autograph too? I was like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So he's running around trying to find Jerry Rice, and then Brent Jones comes over and is like, what? Well, you don't want me? Yeah, I can't sign the hat? Am I not famous enough? I was like, oh my God. It's crazy. Yeah, that happened. I love listening to Brent Jones on the radio too. He's so enthusiastic. He's just like Steve. He still feels like the Niners are his family, and he wants to give advice to help the team as opposed to Joe Montana, where I don't know where he's coming from, where he talks about the Niners half the time. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
I want to say one other thing about Steve and Brent Jones. They liked the media.
Yes.
They understood what we do.
Yes.
They enjoyed it, and they liked to participate.
Yes.
As opposed to a nudnik that we're going to get to in a minute who was awful with the media. But for whatever it was worth, those two guys, and I'd say Ronnie too, really loved to be with the media.
Now that you put it that way, I got another person to add to this list. John Lynch. Now, he didn't get pressed today, But John Lynch has been very good to me on many
Yes.
occasions. I very much like John Lynch, even though he's not a
love
player.
it. I knew him as a college player, and I thought he was terrific. I
Yeah.
enjoyed spending time with him. I admire. He never gets angry at a question.
No.
Never. He's got tremendous poise and a good nature.
I got one more. He started off as interesting and then finished off as favorite. I love Jim Harbaugh. Not because he loves me, but because of how much he loves and respects you. And that developed over about 3 or 4 years. But I saw him a few months ago, and he gets this look like, how's your dad? How is your dad? Would you tell him I say hello? Would you tell him? It's like, man, I love that guy, Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, we came to really have what we learned about Jim. Iggy and I really asked him the most difficult questions. Iggy would actually ask real football questions because he knew stuff. And not only didn't he mind, he hoped we would because he's very competitive and he wanted there to be drama and fireworks in the room.
Right. Head-to-head competition.
Iggy, could you tell him the time you asked about the lookie?
Oh, yeah. It was after a game when Vernon Davis had 0 catches. Vernon Davis was the freaking man. 0 catches. And from my perspective, that's on the coach. Like, you can't let your best player get taken out of a game. So instead of saying the next day, hey, Jim, how come you couldn't get the ball to your tight end? Which is a question.
Would piss him off. Yeah.
It would piss him off, and it's a question any reporter could ask. I tried to speak his language, and I was saying, Jim, since your days going back to San Diego and Stanford, you have specialized in getting the ball to tight ends, whether it's on, Y stick plays or Y stick looky plays, or it's like, why didn't you call those concepts in this game for Vernon Davis, who had 0 catches? And he's like, I did call Y stick. Didn't call the looky, but I did call Y stick, and I'm glad that, hey, good question. At least we're talking the same language now. Ever since I did that, we got along. Ever since I did that. He was like, and I went back, he did call the stick. He called the stick. I think Alex Smith didn't throw it. He was open, called it one time. So I got it. Ever since then, it's like, at least this, I think from his perspective, so many reporters try to take shots at coaches without knowing a damn thing about the game. At least this one reporter did some homework.
And he said, I did call the stick. Iggy, it's like a golfer. They know every shot they take. He knew every call he made, right?
Yes, he does. Of course.
And
Absolutely.
he loved you for asking the question. And there was a time when Iggy was not popular in that locker room. And one day, Jim hung around in the lunch hour, walked around and put his arm around Iggy's shoulder. Iggy was in your 20s, Iggy.
Yeah.
And letting
25.
Everybody on that team know this guy's okay by me.
So strange. It was right after they lost to the Colts. They were 2-0. They started the season 2-0. They were going to play Andrew Luck at home. It was right after Aldon Smith cracked his car up and played in the game. It was a very controversial week. Everyone picked the Niners to beat the Colts. They lost. I predicted they would lose, and we gave Jim a lot of grief for playing Aldon Smith in that game. And we were right. And that was the first time that Jim ever walked up to me, said my name, talked to me alone. We'd interacted in group press conferences, but he walked up to me that Monday. What was it? That Wednesday. The first Wednesday back in the locker room, and just walked up to me like we'd been talking one-on-one forever. Hey, Grant, how you doing? I'm okay. Hey, Jim, how's it going? Yeah, what's going on, man? It's like, I don't know. Do we talk? I don't know. But that was, ever since then, we were cool. Amazing.
And you admired that.
I did. I mean, I've never
as well.
exactly had that interaction with Kyle yet. Maybe next year.